There's no doubt that war is brutal and that the Clone Wars were no exception to this rule. On this channel, we like to talk about the harsh reality civilians and soldiers alike faced during this contrived conflict to show exactly how much everyone involved was suffering. The clone troopers were no exception. We've talked about how certain units, such as the 327th, got some of the worst assignments of the Clone Wars, or how clone battle doctrine was particularly brutal. Today, we're going to look at another clone trooper division that really drew the short straw, the 91st Mobile Reconnaissance Corps, and why we think they had one of the most dangerous jobs in the GAR.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
As evidenced by their name, the 91st was a division of clone troopers dedicated to reconnaissance. In our universe, reconnaissance involves exploring an area to obtain information about the terrain, enemy forces or formations, and other activities. But some of the most basic mission categories involved reconning a zone, an area, a route, or the strength of an enemy force. Things in the Star Wars universe were no different. This is where the 91st Mobile Reconnaissance Corps came in. As a recon division, it was their job to scout ahead and send back critical info to GAR leadership before a large deployment. As a corps, it was made up of roughly 37,000 clone troopers, BARC troopers, and ARF troopers organized into 16 regiments. Officially, they were led by Jedi General Ali Gallia, although other Jedi generals such as Mace Windu and Stas Ali led the 91st during key missions. The corps itself was commanded by Clone Marshal Commander Neo. The 91st was easily distinguishable by the red color on their armor as well as their signature crest, which was a small red circle with a white sword pointing upside down through it. They carried standard clone gear and relied heavily on various vehicles, such as AT-APs, AT-RTs, and LAATs to transport troopers to the remote locations they had to scout or to support them from the air. And boy, did they need support, both physical and emotional. To give you an idea of some of the Sith they went through, we'll take a look at some of the most important battles we saw the 91st Recon Corps participating in. Around 22 or 21 BBY, the 91st, then led by Commander Pons, was sent with Commander Cody, Mace Windu, and Obi-Wan Kenobi to take out a separatist warship repair facility called the Tambor Deep Space Center. The 91st took heavy losses during the battle, including the loss of an entire squadron. The 91st were also sent alongside the Jedi to Malastare. During the Battle of Malastare in 21 BBY, an electro-proton bomb they set off unearthed the last Zillo beast still alive, which proceeded to absolutely maul its way through the clone forces. One of the more well-known battles they were deployed in was the Battle of Ryloth. During the attack on Lesu, the planet's capital city, the 91st's Lightning Squadron were able to swoop in with the Corps' AT-TEs and rescue Mace Windu's forces, which had been cornered by separatist assault tanks. The ARF troopers were later instrumental in Windu's plan to take the capital. Without them, it's unlikely the Republic would have managed to win the battle. In the later part of the Clone Wars, the 91st continued to see decisive action, some good, some bad. During the Outer Rim sieges, a division of the 91st, again first under Windu, then Stas Ali, travelled to Saleucami, fought in a battle, and remained behind to scout the area and uncover any surviving pockets of separatist or Morgul resistance. This was where Order 66 found them, and, well, that's an entirely different story. Now, we hear you. From everything we've said, that doesn't sound all that bad, but it was, and we'll explain why. See, the thing about reconnaissance missions is that they're both very, very hazardous and very, very unpleasant. As part of their recon missions, the 91st were the first ones on scene in some of the most unpleasant and hostile places in the galaxy. They went in without support because that's the whole point of recon, and had to navigate entirely unknown swaths of territory up against unknown numbers and kinds of enemies, with just the hope that they would make it through their route and live long enough to send intelligence back to base. Think of places like Felucia or Umbara, and imagine being sent there all alone into the heart of enemy territory. That was the kind of mission the 91st undertook on a regular basis. If the danger wasn't enough to make their jobs a nightmare, you have to factor in the knowledge every clone kept near and dear to his heart, they were replaceable. Much like the B-1 battle droids that were occasionally sent out on recon on STAPs, the 91st knew that they didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. The Grand Army of the Republic had millions of clones at its disposal, and many military commanders viewed the clones as interchangeable pawns on a much more important chessboard. Even many Jedi failed to see the value in clone troopers. We're sure Pong Krell wasn't the exception here. If he were, Jedi such as Plo Koon wouldn't have made such an impression on the various clone trooper divisions. Every single clone trooper in the 91st was disposable, and they felt it. So it wasn't enough that the 91st had to face check all the bushes in the galaxy, but they also did so knowing they weren't going to get any support if they ran into an enemy they couldn't handle. Their job was to go in and gather intel. If they died trying, the Republic wasn't going to shed a tear. And that's just the emotional baggage they had when they landed. After they actually started their mission, Sith only kept hitting the fan. As we mentioned previously, the 91st was sent to some of the most unpleasant places in the galaxy. Reconning terrain meant wading through swamps, sand dunes, or creepy forests for a living. Sure, they had vehicles to support them, but using them wasn't always an option. There were times where they had to pass through enemy lines or gather intel on enemy fortifications. In those situations, the long-suffering recon troopers likely had to plod forth on foot with all the difficulties that entailed. Another hardship they probably had to endure that many don't think about is the inability to act on what they saw. Undoubtedly, during missions where they were tasked with observing and gathering information, the 91st witnessed more than their fair share of cruelty, whether that was separatist atrocities or just general suffering. However, their mission was observation, not observation and resolution. They were only there to report back with their findings. This meant they weren't technically allowed to intervene and stop whatever horrible thing they had to witness. Doing so would give away the Republic's involvement and put their enemies on their guard. Instead, all the 91st could do was bear silent witness. Add to that the constant fear of being discovered, and the full picture of how emotionally draining and traumatic these missions could be begins to emerge. Now, we're not saying that the 91st Recon Corps had the hardest job in all of the Grand Army of the Republic. Maybe the Lancer Battalion had it worse, maybe they didn't. Whatever their ranking on the high score of suck, however, there's no doubt that the 91st really got a steaming helping of Sith thrown their way at every opportunity. And that's probably why Neo was one of the most depressed and apathetic commanders of the Grand Army of the Republic. At least, that's what we think. But what do you think? Do you agree with us that the 91st Recon Corps really got the short end of the stick? Do you want to hear more about the Lancer Battalion and how they dealt with almost as much Sith as the 91st? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.